Stu
What's up,
Holden,
everybody? It's your host, Louisiana Outlaw here.
and I'm George Outlaw.
And it's amazing that horror movies in itself scare the living shit out of most of us, alright? It can be paranormal, it can be slasher times paranormal, like the list goes on, yet we create more. And we literally indulge in a single franchise. Friday 13th. There have been how many movies of that? Like, of that particular franchise? And then, like, you can even look at the Halloween franchise. How many movies have there been of that? Or even, like, timeline divergence, right? Or, uh, detours off the original timeline. Put it that way. And horror in itself doesn't just stem from slasher movies. Look at the Terminator series. The original fucking Terminator was scary as hell if you think about it. Just the thought of killer cyborgs taking over that stems from Skynet, which is a computerized defense system. Yeah. But we're gonna go ahead and look at the complete Friday the 13th timeline explained. Because we could try and explain it ourselves, but we would have to watch all the movies, and I think that would take forever. So we'll have somebody else sum it up for us.
The Friday the 13th franchise has an incredibly messy timeline that stretches across
You ain't
11
fucking
films
lying on
and
that
nearly
one.
500 canonical years. You did not hear that wrong. From the origin of Jason Voorhees himself through to the far-flung realms of space, God, this franchise is bonkers. This is the complete Friday the 13th timeline finally explained.
Okay, so I've seen a lot of stories explained videos, and I rarely ever see when the explainer, or the person doing the voiceover actually shows their face. This is like a refreshing experience, because then we get to see who's actually doing the video.
Okay, we kick this mad journey off in 1979, the year in which the majority of the original Friday the 13th takes place. I say majority because the film actually starts in 1958, when a pair of camp counselors are unceremoniously killed by an unseen murderer at Camp Crystal Lake. This double homicide reaffirms a curse said to be attached to the lake, one dating back to 1957 when a young boy drowned there after being neglected by horny teens working at the camp.
I like how he just comes out here, warning teens. Okay then. He gave no fucks.
Remember this as it's pretty much the most pivotal moment in this whole franchise. Fast forward 21 years and we're with a group of fresh-faced teens who are prepping the campground.
Yo, fun fact about the original Friday the 13th. It actually came out 1 year after Halloween did.
For its imminent opening. They're being supervised by...
Halloween came out in 1978, this came out in 1979. Crazy, huh? Fun fact, the original Halloween came out the same year my mother was born.
Hey, you know what? Speaking of, I don't mean to cut you off, but we've heard Freddy versus
Jason.
What about Jason versus Michael Myers?
That would be an interesting ad date. Someone needs to do that.
I've thought about that for years.
I have too. Imagine if, I wonder how that would work. Michael Myers versus Freddy.
And they both don't talk either.
I think the only fucking, the only sound you can ever hear out of fucking Jason is when he was unmasked.
By the Lecce owner Steve Christie, who leaves the campsite to grab supplies before an approaching thunderstorm hits. Our gang of teens do sweet f*** all while he's gone. They go swimming, kill a poor defenseless snake, and Kevin Bacon gets his game face on, only to get an arrow right through the neck. One by one, the camp counselors are picked off by an unknown knife-wielding maniac, until we're left with our final girl, Alice, who blocks herself into one of the cabins. Enter one Pamela Voorhees.
Well, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
Who has supposedly come to offer some help. But there's something not quite right about Mrs. Voorhees. A point that's
yeah,
proven
no
when
shit,
she
she's
reveals
batshit
herself to
fucking
be
crazy.
the mother of Jason, the kid who died all those years ago.
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
Mama Voorhees immediately switches from concerned to murderous and chases Alice all over the campsite. After a prolonged fight on the edge of the lake, Alice gets the best of Mrs. Voorhees, decapitating her with a machete, a death that is shot in glorious slow motion as if it's the winning goal in a World Cup.
Okay, so even though I'm a big fan of Friday the 13th, I did not know that Jason Voorhees' birthday was June 13th, 1946. So does that mean he was born on Friday the 13th?
Hey, and by the way, I didn't know they killed his mother for real.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a
Final. Alice
See, I
fumbles
haven't
her way into a
watched all
canoe
of
and
them in a
paddles out
while.
onto the lake where presumably she thinks she'll be safest. Either way, the police arrive the next morning, and with Alice perfectly safe, the original Friday the 13th is brought to a close. Well, not quite. There's time for one last jump scare, which it turns out is all in Alice's head. With Alice safely in hospital, she inquires into whether the police ever found a boy in the lake.
The one who attacked me, the one who pulled me underneath the water.
Ma'am, we didn't find any boy.
Ooh, spooky. The first sequel of many kicks off with an extended opening that basically just recaps the previous film and kills off that film's final girl, Alice. The actual main plot for Friday the 13th Part 2 is set 5 years later though, as we are constantly reminded.
It was 5 years ago.
5 years.
5 years, and that's the way we want to keep it.
It's 1984 and we are back at Crystal Lake because nobody has learned anything from the events of the original film. A whole new cast of horny teens have respawned in the area and they've taken up residence on the shores of the cursed lake. After the urban legend
Okay, so you mean to tell me those fucking people look like they're in their mid-20s or teenagers?
of Jason Voorhees is regaled around a
Weird.
campfire, our gang make for the nearest bar for one last night out before their summer of work begins. All except for a select few who opt to stay behind. Absolutely zero guesses for what happens to them. Eventually, the teens return from the pub only to find the lakeside camp in absolute carnage. And no surprises, it's Jason Voorhees behind the machete racking up those kill streaks. Turns out Jason didn't die all those years ago and has been roaming the Crystal Lake woods ever since. You might ask yourself questions like, where's he been all those years? And how did a child turn into a giant man mountain while surviving off the woods? But the filmmakers would really rather you didn't. Jason got a taste for killing by murdering Alice back in the prologue, which in his sick, twisted head was revenge for Alice decapitating his mum. Anywho, Jason's 1984 carnage continues when he chases Part 2's final girl, a counsellor named Ginny, to his shack in the woods. There, Ginny discovers a shrine with Mrs. Voorhees' severed head on it, and has the absolutely bonkers idea of pretending to be Mrs. Voorhees by putting on her jumper and, well, damn, it actually nearly works.
Now come to mommy.
Jason is no fool though, well, not yet at least, and he sees through Jenny's ruse. Just as she's about to be killed, her boyfriend Paul bursts in to save the day, and the pair overpower Jason with his own machete. Or did they? Well, I'm not actually sure, because the ending to Part 2 is genuinely quite ambiguous. Either way, we are treated to another glorious jump scare. This time, a maskless Jason jumping through Ginny and Paul's cabin window, all before it's revealed to be a part of Ginny's dream.
Paul? Where's Paul?
Yeah, that's right. Jason didn't have the hockey mask in the beginning. And by the way, when they said Jenny, I thought of what my uncle used to tell me. It's like, and in the end,
the third installment in the franchise takes place immediately after the events of Part 2. It's the day after Jason's Night of Destruction, and who's ready for another rerun of teens getting murdered? I sure as hell am. This time, the whole film is in eye-popping 3D, because that was a thing in 1982 when the movie was released. I mean, there is so much unnecessary gimmicky 3D in this movie. Half the film is basically just people poking stuff into the camera. At least there's some inventive kills, I guess. Alright, I'm getting quite cynical. Let's get back to the timeline. After escaping the police at the end of part 2, a wounded Jason makes for a convenience store to get medical supplies, murdering the husband and wife team who run it in the process. While this is going on, a new gang of teens arrive in the area for a bit of summer sun. Most of them are absolutely forgettable, all except for practical joker Shelley, who is easily the best character in the franchise so far. It's top lad Shelley that we have to thank for giving us the iconic look of Jason Voorhees too. Shelley uses a hockey mask to scare one of his pals, and well, it's the last prank he ever pulls, as he is thoroughly murdered by Jason shortly after. The hockey mask lives on though, and here we are, precisely an hour into part 3, and nearly 4 hours into the franchise overall, and Jason Voorhees has finally completed his iconic costume. To celebrate, he murders our forgettable teens until we're left with the customary final girl called Chris.
Damn, bro.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, it's revealed earlier in the film that Chris actually has history with Jason. She was attacked by him 2 years previously in 1982 and has only now returned to Crystal Lake to get over her trauma. She does this in style by lodging a great hulking axe into Jason's skull. Exhausted, she drops into a canoe and gets out on the lake. Why is this becoming a trend in these movies? The trademark final jump scare predictably makes its entrance, only this time it's Mrs. Voorhees springing from the lake, complete with her head attached for some reason. Again, it's only a dream. As Chris is taken away, we see the body of Jason still lying with the axe lodged in his head. Ooh, I wonder if it will stay that way. The next Friday the 13th is known as the final chapter, which as we all know means the 4th of 11 films. This film was meant to put a nice neat little bow on the Friday the 13th franchise back in 1984, however it did so well at the box office that, well, we got another 7 films. And to be fair, this one's pretty good and features Corey Feldman and Marty McFly's dad to boot. Proceedings kick off pretty much immediately after Friday Part 3 with Jason's corpse being carted off to the morgue. For reasons that aren't really explained, Jason is revived, and he makes haste in murdering the on-duty coroners. With Jason back, we enter pretty familiar territory: horny teens, Crystal Lake, murder and mayhem, etc, etc. But this time around, there are a couple of new ingredients added into the mix. First up, we've got Corey Feldman's 12-year-old Tommy Jarvis, a monster makeup enthusiast and creepy peeping Tom? Is that right? Oh, God. Tommy lives with his mum and sister Trish next door to the house full of horny teenagers. And then there's this lumberjack-looking guy, Rob Dyer, who's seeking revenge on Jason for the murder of his sister Sandra, all the way back in part 2. Wait, which one was she again? Oh yeah, I remember, the human kebab. Anyway, Jason eventually turns up for a spot of murdering, and he promptly dispatches pretty much the entire cast until it's just Tommy, Trish, and Jason. After an extended chase sequence through both houses, Jason finally corners Trish, only to be distracted by... Jason! I think he's tried to make himself look like Jason as a kid. I think. Either way, this distracts Jason enough for Trish and Tommy to finish the machete-wielding madman off once and for all.
Or so you think.
Bro, that kid was going ham, though. Of course, this franchise
isn't done yet. And with Part 5, A New Beginning, this timeline is about to get all kinds of messy. Little, bald Tommy Jarvis, who was 12 in the last film, is now nearing adulthood at the age of 17, placing this film approximately in 1989. It doesn't help matters that he's played by the then 25-year-old John Shepherd. I guess the stress of his encounter with Jason aged him prematurely. In the wake of killing a horror icon in the previous film...
Wait, what?
I was like, so they skipped 5 years to make it the next film in 89? 84 to 89.
A traumatized Tommy has been shuffled around from institute to institute, eventually arriving at the Pinehurst halfway house. Predictably, things get stabby as soon as he arrives, starting with this poor lad Joey, who gets axed by a wood-chopping teen just for being talkative. This kickstarts another slate of mysterious killings. I say mysterious because this film is notable for the absence of Jason Voorhees, who very much died in the last film. The new beginning of the eventually arriving at the Pinehurst halfway house. Predictably, things get stabby as soon as he arrives, starting with this poor lad Joey, who gets axed by a wood-chopping teen just for being talkative. This kickstarts
I
another slate of
remember that
mysterious
one.
killings. I say
Okay, so you seen that? Oh shit! Hang on. Oh fuck. Well, you seen the machete that had the saw back on it? That's actually how my Gerber is, and that's
Hey,
why I
by the
wanted to
way,
bring it up here for this video, but I didn't feel like going back downstairs because it's in the kitchen.
hey, I can't remember. That might have been one of the older films that they talked about, where he took that one chick and put her in a sleeping bag and beat her up against a tree.
I think that actually might be one of the later films.
mysterious because this film is notable for the absence of Jason Voorhees, who very much died in the last film. The new beginning of the title was supposed to be a fresh start for the franchise, but as you'll see, this film's villain is just crap. I'm getting ahead of myself. With no Jason, A New Beginning kinda plays out like an R-rated version of Scooby-Doo, as bland, forgettable characters get murdered at an alarming rate by a mysterious killer wearing Jason's iconic hockey mask. This mysterious survivors. The beginning of the title was supposed to be a fresh start for the franchise, but as you'll see, this film's villain is just crap. I'm getting ahead of myself. With no Jason, A New Beginning kinda plays out like an R-rated.
You can definitely tell this is the fucking 80s right here, just by the fucking earrings. And the chain and shit. Like, that's 80s attire right there. You got the leather jacket, got the earrings. What almost looks like a fucking choker.
Version of Scooby-Doo, as bland, forgettable characters get murdered at an alarming rate by a mysterious killer wearing Jason's iconic hockey mask. This mysterious murder frenzy eventually culminates in the not Jason squaring off against a final team of survivors, a counselor called Pam, a kid called Reggie, and our mate Tommy Jarvis. The gang of meddlesome kids eventually overpower the not Jason and unmask him to be none other than... who? Wait, is that the paramedic from earlier in the film? Yeah, that's Roy Burns, who is apparently Joey's father. Remember Joey, the motor mouth that got axed earlier? Anyway, seeing his son's mutilated corpse turned Roy insane, and he leveraged the legend of Jason Voorhees to get revenge.
Come on, Roy. Get your hands dirty.
I'm not gonna lie, that reveal was massively underwhelming. Luckily, the producers thought so too, and they made that fact abundantly clear with the next film's title.
I was walking and then this like speak came to me. Want to try it out? Bring the baby.
Before anybody says anything in the comments, yes, I know I need to get a fucking ad blocker.
Yeah, Jason wasn't in the last movie. So
I need to get an ad blocker.
they make sure Jason Lives is in
I
the
was
title.
being
I know.
sarcastic.
See, I have a caveat with an ad blocker, right? So, while I do like using them from time to time, I think it's unfair to, like, you know, GameSpot Universe and people who actually make money off of these videos from, like, views and ads, or from ads and whatnot. So, I feel like me using an ad blocker, that's taking money away from them.
Of this
Pretty
one to
much.
correct the mistake. And you know what? This one's probably the best so far. The year is 1990, and we're back with 18-year-old Tommy Jarvis, this time played by 28-year-old...
What year were you born?
90.
So this... Bro, how... So this movie came out when you were practically a baby.
Well, it depends on what exactly the release date, too.
Let me see.
Might have been a few months old. I think it might have been came out in the early. Which one is this?
Let me see if they, if you said.
title.
Because it's...
Oh, shit, hold up. I want his shirt, The Goonies.
Yeah, I do
Title.
too.
Jason Lives. Okay, so let me see. Jason Lives.
I have...
Okay, so
seen
no,
the good-
actually... What's no fucking... Oh, unless they're... Okay, it's a timeline progression rather than when the actual movie was released. So the
Hey, but-
movie actually released in 1986, but the timeline was supposed to take in 1990, so it's timeline rather than the actual release.
Hey,
Hmm.
I haven't seen the Goonies in ages.
Yeah, Jason wasn't in the last movie, so they make sure Jason Lives is in the title of this one to correct the mistake. And you know what? This one's probably the best so far. The year is 1990, and we're back with 18-year-old Tommy Jarvis, this time played by 28-year-old Tom Matthews. So they didn't even try with that one, I guess. The film kicks off with Tommy and a pal attempting to burn the corpse of Jason, sending him to hell for good. Instead, they accidentally resurrect Jason, and with that, the Friday the 13th franchise wades into the supernatural for the very first time. To celebrate, an undead Jason punches Tommy's pal right through the chest, and we're all treated to a glorious...
Okay, so I'm gonna say something right now. The way he punched him straight through the chest with the heart, that literally just tells you the amount of strength Jason actually has. I'm literally... Okay, so, like, we know Michael Myers is pretty fucking strong, but I don't think I've ever seen Michael rip the heart out of somebody.
That's what I was
Yes,
about to say.
Friday
I
the
wonder who's stronger, Jason or Michael Myers. Probably
13th
Jason.
rendition of the classic James Bond.
Well, okay, so if you go back to the timeline thing that we watched from I think it's CZ's World. I might be wrong on the name. I know it's something World. He did say that Michael gets stronger the more he kills, right? So if we take Michael in his prime, put him up against Jason, I think honestly it would be an even match. But I
Probably
think
would.
Gumbow. Yeah, what a start. Friday the 13th franchise wades into the supernatural for the very
I want to
first
show you
time.
something. I wanted
To
talk about
celebrate,
something
an
here.
undead Jason punches Tommy's pal right through the chest, and we're all treated to a glorious Friday the 13th rendition of the classic James Bond Gumbow.
Yeah, okay, so he said it, James Bond.
Yeah, what a start. We're back at Camp Crystal Lake, now renamed Forest Green. There's a gang of new horny teenage counselors, and Jason gets to killing straight away. What makes Jason
I like how
Lives
he always
unique,
says
though,
that.
It makes me wonder if Jason isn't killing them because he wants to. I wonder if he's killing them because he's sexually frustrated.
That could be a possibility.
It's like, huh? I mean, he never got to smash, so who knows?
is a newfound sense of humor. The characters are all self-aware.
What the fuck? Oh my god.
I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
And the gruesome kills are laced with a healthy dose of absurd parody.
Bruh, okay, while he's doing that, I'll be throwing that bitch in reverse.
Well,
The characters
damn.
aren't complete douchebags as well, and that makes it easier to become invested in Tommy's plight to bring Jason's killing ways to an end. He eventually does this by leading him back to Camp Crystal Lake, where he wrestles with Jason before sending him to the bottom of the lake chained to a giant boulder. Is he finally dead? Not by a long shot. A last lingering
Don't
look
know.
at the soggy murderer shows he's just biding his time, waiting for the new blood.
It just goes to show right there, right? Like, so Jason, he's underwater, right? Like, he's not drowning or anything. So that tells you right there that he is undead. Like, he is literally unstoppable in that regards. If he can, like, stay underwater for that long, yeah, he's not alive at this point. He is literally fucking demonic.
Fresh stab at a clean slate for the franchise offered up another vague time jump for this increasingly confusing timeline. Proceedings kick off quite soon after the events of Jason Lives, with an opening scene taking place on the 13th of October on Crystal Lake. We then see our undead pal still chained to the bottom of the lake before meeting the Shepherd family and their 10-year-old daughter Tina. Upset at her alcoholic father for abusing her mother, Tina runs away and ends up on the lake, where she accidentally kills her father with telekinetic powers. We are really through the looking glass here, folks. Yeah, this film was originally planned to be Freddy vs. Jason, a crossover with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
Okay, why do I get Carrie vibes from this?
I don't know. Maybe that's a mixed realm.
Because think about it. Carrie literally had fucking telekinetic powers, and this just reminds me of that.
But the rights couldn't be secured, and so that idea went on the back burner for another 15 years. Instead, the idea of Jason versus Carrie was mooted, and as a result, we got this half-baked mess. Anyway, back to the timeline. We fast forward in time, and we're back
Fuck me in the ass. Carrie versus I swear, I cannot make this. I did not see this. I did not see this. Oh.
Neither did I.
What the fuck? That's kind of creepy because I'm like, this gives me Carrie vibes, and then he says this shit.
Tina, who's now a 17-year-old dealing with her telekinetic powers and the fact that she pretty much murdered her father. With that time jump, I placed The New Blood in the late 90s, most likely around 1997. And with that bombshell, please enjoy all the amazing 80s haircuts, living life proudly, just 3 years short of the millennium. This is a Friday the 13th movie though, and we need some horny teens to kill. Enter this bunch, who are waiting to surprise a friend for their birthday at Crystal Lake, which doesn't seem to go by Forest Green anymore. I guess they just embrace their murderous urban legend. Long story short, everyone dies, and in particularly bloodless fashion as well, as the MPAA went to town censoring this movie. We're finally left with Carrie, Tina, a top lad named Nick, and haircuts, living life.
Okay, so I gotta correct you, GameSpot Universe. You said bloodless,
Proudly just 3 years short of the millennium. This is a Friday the 13th movie though, and we need some horny teens to kill. Enter this bunch, who are waiting to surprise a friend for their birthday at Crystal Lake, which doesn't seem to go by Forest Green anymore. I guess they just embrace their murderous urban legend. Long story short, everyone dies, and in particularly bloodless fashion as well, as the MPAA went to town censoring this movie.
So was that not blood on the sleeping bag?
We're finally left with Tina, a top lad named Nick, and of course the undead Jason, who's now sporting a gruesome rotting ribcage. We get the telekinetic battle we're promised, and it's not half bad to be fair.
Okay,
Carrie
so
Tina.
I actually think this is the this is what I was telling you about. Watch this shit.
Whips Jason's mask off, strangles him with some electric cabling, and then sets him and the whole house on fire. Is that enough to kill Jason?
Nope.
Hell no. This is a horror movie, of course, and Jason makes one. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. I'm not gonna.
Hang on.
We're finally left with Tina. Is that enough to kill Jason? Hell no.
That's only a face a mother could love.
This is a horror movie, of course, and
damn, he's sexy. Oh, really.
Damn, that's what he looks like without his fucking face.
Mm-hmm.
Jason makes one. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. I'm not going to sneeze. Jason makes one last play before being dragged to the depths of Crystal Lake by the reincarnated telekinetic ghost of Tina's dad? Right, we are 8 films into this franchise, and things are going from bad to worse for this timeline.
How old was I in 1998? Let's see, I was born in 95.
3, something like that.
Jason Takes Manhattan is set roughly a year after The New Blood.
Yeah,
a date
3.
I've gleaned from the fact that Jason wakes up following the events of the previous film to stalk a load of teens graduating, an event that would likely happen at the end of the next school year, hence 1998. And for a film set in the late 90s, it sure as hell looks a lot like it was filmed and released in 1989. Like The New Blood, there is a liberal dose of 80s pop culture.
Old.
There's not a
Or not
Nokia 5110 anywhere in sight.
Old.
And wait, was that the logo for Tim Burton's Batman in Times Square? A film that famously came out in 1989.
Wait, is this Jason Takes Manhattan?
I think so.
Sure was. Okay, plot-wise, Part 8 sees Jason resurrected again to murder a pair of teens on a boat and somehow sail said boat all the way from Crystal Lake to the sea. There he boards a booze cruise for students celebrating their graduation. As the ship heads across stormy seas towards the titular Manhattan, Jason makes the most of the journey, stabbing and bludgeoning each student at every turn. Revolutionary stuff, I'm sure you'll agree. From Crystal Lake to the sea. There he boards a booze cruise for students celebrating their graduation. As the ship heads across stormy seas towards the titular Manhattan, Jason makes the most of the journey, stabbing and bludgeoning each student.
Why? Why use the flying V, dude? Like, come on now. That's a good guitar.
At every turn.
I hope it's
Revolutionary
I
stuff.
actually
I'm
hope
sure
it was
he'll
like
agree.
a knockoff.
It also
Flying
becomes
V,
apparent that
not an
Jason can
actual
now
Gibson.
teleport at will. But this appears to be more of an excuse for lazy filmmaking than it is a point of character development. Jason eventually arrives at Manhattan and chases our remaining survivors, not gonna lie, I've already forgotten their names, into the streets of New York City. En route, he kills a couple of muggers, blows up a police car, and most impressively, punches a guy's head clean off. Our final pair of teens are chased down into the sewers by Jason.
Yeah, but you,
and
oh, you fucking asshole! Why didn't you show the fucking fight scene between him and Jason?
just as he catches up with them, a ton of toxic waste
Yeah,
washes
exactly.
through, supposedly killing him. He briefly turns into a vision of himself as an innocent child, as this film, like about 8 other entries in this franchise, was supposed to be the last Friday the 13th film and bring it all to a satisfying close. It didn't. And
I
it wasn't.
remember that.
As has become
Okay, so I'm gonna say right now, I've seen Jason Goes to Hell, and this was a fucking turn of weirdism.
the tradition with the naming conventions of this
It
mad
was.
franchise, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, is not The Final Friday. The year is 2003, and welcome to the film in the Friday the 13th franchise that totally loses the plot. Since his reign of carnage across
My sister would have been a year old in this timeline.
Manhattan, Jason Voorhees has reached the top of the FBI's most wanted list. Yeah, the FBI are hunting down supernatural criminals now. They succeed in doing this in the opening scene of the movie, and Jason's obliterated corpse is taken to the morgue. While there, Jason's soul possesses the coroner, who, well, then... he eats Jason's heart and becomes Jason. Either way, Jason is back and he goes on another killing spree. It's just less interesting this time because he doesn't look like Jason. There's also a ton of retconned supernatural rubbish that this
I would say, arguably, this is actually kind of a creepy thing because going back to the whole Michael Myers thing, how he can, like, kind of possess other people, it seems Jason can actually do the same.
film just conveniently adds into the canon. Firstly, it turns out that the only way Jason can truly be killed is by another member of the Voorhees family. Secondly, and in no way contrived for the purposes of this movie, it turns out that Jason actually has a half-sister, Diana, and if he possesses her, or any of her descendants, he'll return to his normal, invincible state. Armed with all that nonsense, the film then charges full speed ahead with the soul of Jason jumping from one host to the next until he finally returns to his iconic self, having possessed his half-sister. About an hour and 20 minutes into
Okay, did she literally gave birth to her half-brother?
an hour and 25-minute film. Yeah, there is approximately 5 minutes of Jason Voorhees in this movie. Instead, we get this disgusting slug monster thing. This car crash ends with Jason being stabbed by his half-niece, is that a thing? Using some magical dagger that's not really explained, and he is dragged to hell once and for all. And as we know, this is the final Friday, so that's very much the end of Jason Voorhees.
Not really.
Oh, for f***'s sake.
Ah, there we go. The movie that I like right there.
Yeah,
Jason
definitely
X.
installing an ad blocker.
You know that? That's my favorite one right there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, that's not it.
Finally, it's the
Freddy vs. Jason would be honestly my favorite.
Freddy vs. Jason
Yeah,
crossover.
I
Surprisingly
think
few
you
of
know
us.
which one I'm talking about.
Which one?
Jason X, which is Jason 10.
Oh
where it takes
yeah.
Have been waiting
takes place
15
in
years
outer
for.
space.
Jason is summoned back from hell by a Nightmare on Elm Street's Freddy Krueger, just a short while after the events of the final Friday. We can place this film in 2003 due to a billboard sign advertising the reopening of Crystal Lake in spring 2004.
That's another one we need to do is a full like timeline explained on Nightmare on Elm Street.
Freddy has brought Jason back from the dead to aid him in his never-ending quest to murder the teens of Springwood. You see, our Fred has lost his touch, and he needs Jason's help to cultivate a little fear among the population. But what Freddy doesn't count for is...
Okay, so, to those who don't know anything about Freddy Krueger, is, he is driven by fear, right? Fear is what gives him his power. And if nobody's afraid of him, well, then he's essentially powerless. So, he needed the help of Jason.
Jason's stealing his kills, and this is basically the entire reasoning behind the titular fight. Of course, there's some bland, forgettable teens to be slaughtered along the way, but really, we're all here for the big fight. 3 rounds between 2 icons of horror with only 1 winner. Who's ready? For about 15 minutes of actual Freddy vs. Jason in a 90-minute movie. There's stabbing and slashing galore across those precious 15 minutes, but this battle between 2 immortal demons rapidly reaches its climax at the shores of Crystal Lake, when Jason impales Freddy with his own arm. Freddy is then decapitated by one of the forgettable teens, and both Freddy and Jason sink into the depths of Crystal Lake, both very dead. Only our pal Jason didn't die. He emerges from the water the next day carrying the severed head of Freddy, which cheekily winks at the camera.
Okay, out of horror movies, that has to be the most comedic thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sometimes I ask myself, who really won that?
There's your favorite movie.
We've reached the final leg on this hellish journey, Jason X.
Actually, I'm gonna say this. Shit, my bad. What the hell did I hit? How did I mute it? Okay.
The so bad it's good category. Of course, Jason was eventually heading to space. There was surely no other logical way to conclude this mad franchise, and Jason X does not disappoint. The film kicks off in 2010 with an incarcerated Jason in a maximum security prison at the Crystal Lake Research Facility. He escapes because otherwise there wouldn't be a movie, and ends up getting cryogenically frozen by one of his captors. Fast forward around 450 years, and we're in the year 2455. A space field trip leads a group of space students and a space professor to uncover the frozen remains of Jason and his captor, and they are promptly transported back to their spaceship orbiting the devastated remains of Earth-1. Obviously, Jason awakes from his slumber and gets to killing.
Oh, that was like iconic. Smashes her.
Okay, that was fucking brutal. I'm not gonna lie, having your face frozen then...
The editing here appears to suggest that Jason wakes up on the spaceship just as the teens start having sex. Is this how deep his hatred of premarital teen sex goes? I'm gonna say yes. Either way, he...
Or he's fucking horny and needs to get laid.
Tears his way through the ship, starting with the horny teens and upgrading to a squad of space commandos until he meets his match in a creepy android called KM-14, who absolutely obliterates him. But this being the future, Jason is revived by some nanotechnology that restores him and then some. This new Uber Jason causes even more carnage before he's blown out of the goddamn spaceship and down to Earth 2, the final Earth A, where he lands conveniently in a lake with some nearby teens making out. And with that, the franchise has come full circle. It's beautiful. It's like poetry. And that is the Friday the 13th timeline fully explained. As you may have noticed, I've not included the 2009 reboot here, as that film actually takes place in an alternate universe and thus doesn't really fit into the canonical timeline here.
Hey.
I hope you enjoyed this chronological...
What's up?
I was about to say, by the way, what I noticed about Jason X is he ended up being almost like a robotic Jason. His mask would look like it was made out of steel or something.
Until he meets his match in a creepy android called K.
How the fuck you gonna call her creepy? That bitch is hot as shit, even though she's a robot.
M14.
A lot of females in that movie
obliterates him. But this being the future, Jason is revived by some nanotechnology that restores him and then some. This new Uber Jason causes even more carnage before he's blown out of the goddamn spaceship until he meets his match in a creepy android called KM14, who absolutely obliterates him. But this being the future, Jason is revived by some nanotechnology that restores him and then some.
They literally, okay, so I don't know if they swapped actors, but this fucking Jason is jacked. Like, he is fucking, like, he got 10 times bigger, I'm just saying.
This new Uber
Hey.
Jason causes even
That Jason looks like he's bulletproof.
more carnage
Oh, yeah.
before he's blown out
Like,
of the
did you see
goddamn
the way he
spaceship and
literally
down to
punched
Earth
off the
2, the
robot's
final
head?
Earth A, where
Yeah.
he lands conveniently in a lake with some nearby teens making out. And with that, the franchise has come full circle. Ah, it's beautiful. It's like poetry. And that is the Friday the 13th timeline fully explained. As you may have noticed, I've not included the 2009 reboot here, as that film actually takes place in an alternate universe and thus doesn't really fit into the canonical timeline here. I hope you enjoyed this chronological breakdown of this mad franchise. I've had a ton of fun going down the rabbit hole and trying to piece it all together. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll catch you next time.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, that'd be another good video.
Mm-hmm. Alright. So,
Hey.
the
Do a
fucking
video
Friday 13th movies are... Oh shit, we already watched it.
Hell.
Wait, nope, this is from a different stuff. But, yeah, no, it's fucking crazy, bruh. It is literally crazy. I don't think they're done with Jason, I really don't.
After 40 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah. Technically, that is 40 years, because my mom's in her 40s, and she was born in 19... Yeah, roughly about 40
Man,
years.
if you think about something,
Hmm.
that being it's October, and much as I'm a fan of it, but do a saga of the Call of Duty Black Ops, or not Black Ops, but Zombie Saga.
Yeah. Alright, so, you guys enjoyed the video? Leave a like down below. Don't forget to comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell to be alerted when we upload videos. And share the video if you need to. Anyways, I'm Louisiana Outlaw.
And I'm Georgia Outlaw. Sorry.
We're signing out.